"Daddy, the towel is all wet," Kieran said, holding up the damp, crumpled thing like it personally betrayed him. Zayden Nolan blew his bangs out of his eyes and sighed. "Yeah, bud, that's what happens when you cannonball 15 times in a row." The 5-year-old gave a shrug, then grinned, water dripping from his curls as he padded barefoot toward the lounge chairs. Zayden followed behind, clutching their only dry towel. Public pool days weren't glamorous, but they were cheap, and Kieran loved them. That was all that mattered. Zayden cleared a chair, tossing the towel over it. "You hungry?" "Hot dog?" Kieran asked, bouncing on his toes. Zayden checked his wallet, exactly $8 left after rent, gas, and groceries. "Yeah, one, we'll share." As he turned toward the snack bar, a woman's voice cut through the summer noise. "Oh, crap." He looked over. She stood alone near the pool's edge, dripping wet in a black one-piece, her towel floating lazily in the water. Her dark red hair clung to her neck, her sunglasses nowhere in sight. She was looking around with the kind of mild panic that said she wasn't from around here. Definitely not a regular. Without thinking, Zayden pulled the only dry towel off his chair and walked over. "Hey, looks like yours went swimming," he said, holding the towel out. She blinked at him, startled, then smiled, small at first, then wide. "Wow, thank you. I'm clearly not cut out for public pools." Her voice was warm, low, expensive. He laughed. "Yes, they've got a personality of their own." She wrapped the towel around herself. It dwarfed her. "I really appreciate it. I didn't bring a spare, and I think my phone's toast." Zayden glanced at the pool, where her phone floated face down next to a pool noodle. "Yep, that's a goner." She laughed softly. "Guess I deserved that for trying to check emails during a family swim." He looked around. "Where's your kid?" "Oh no, no kids, just me today. I was hoping to blend in." Zayden raised an eyebrow. "You're not from around here, huh?" She gave a sheepish shrug. "Is it that obvious?" "Let's just say the pool doesn't usually see high heels and a Range Rover." Her eyes widened, then she laughed. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "I notice everything when I've got a kid to keep alive." She looked past him to where Kieran was now watching 2 older boys do belly flops. "He yours?" Zayden nodded. "Yeah, Kieran, he's 5, loves hot dogs, hates naps." She smiled again, softer this time. "He's cute." Zayden felt something shift in the air, something unfamiliar and warm. "Thanks, he's my whole world." She hesitated, then stuck her hand out. "I'm Reagan Cross." Zayden Nolan." They shook hands. Her grip was firm, her skin still damp. "Well, Zayden Nolan," she said, "thank you for rescuing me from towel disaster." He grinned. "Anytime." "Is there a place nearby to grab food? Something edible?" He looked down at Kieran, now tugging on his shorts. "We were just about to grab a hot dog." Reagan glanced at the snack bar, then back at him. "Mind if I join you?" Zayden blinked. This woman with her perfect teeth and designer sunglasses, now tucked into her hair, wanted to eat a hot dog with him. "Sure," he said, "but just a heads up, it's not exactly 5-star." She smirked. "Good, I could use something real." They sat on the cracked plastic benches near the snack bar. Zayden split a hot dog with ketchup down the middle. Reagan surprised him by ordering 3, one for you, one for your son, and one for me, she said, handing the guy a $50 bill like it was a napkin. Zayden stared. "You're just dropping 50s at a pool snack bar." She shrugged. "I didn't have time to break it." "Right." They ate together under the faded umbrella, Reagan laughing as Kieran told her about his cannonball technique. She listened, really listened, like he was the most interesting kid in the world. Zayden watched her. She didn't flinch when ketchup hit her leg. She didn't look around like she was too good for the place. She just fit. And that unsettled him more than anything. After lunch, Kieran ran off to the shallow end. Zayden leaned back, sipping his soda. So, what brings you to our glamorous corner of the world? Reagan looked out at the pool. Honestly, I needed to disappear for a bit. Bad day. Bad year. He nodded. Yeah, I've had a few of those. She glanced at him. You always this generous with strangers and towels. He smiled, only with the ones who fall in pools. She laughed again, then looked at him, really looked at him. You're different. Zayden raised an eyebrow. Different good or different creepy? Good, she said, her voice quieter now. Most guys I meet, they want things you didn't. He shrugged, didn't know I was supposed to. She studied him, her smile fading into something more thoughtful. I like that. Zayden felt his pulse shift. Something about her tone, the way her eyes lingered on his lips, made his skin heat up in a way he hadn't felt in years. What do you do? She asked. Construction, roofing mostly. It's decent work when there's work. She nodded slowly, then hesitated. Can I ask you something? Shoot. Would you ever date someone who doesn't exactly live in your world? Zayden frowned. You mean like someone with a weird job? No, I mean someone who has more money than you. That made him laugh. Reagan, I don't know if you noticed, but everyone has more money than me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I just mean, would it bother you if a woman made more? Zayden looked at her, his voice steady. Money doesn't impress me, character does. Reagan blinked, her lips parting slightly. For a second, she looked like she might say something, but then Kieran came running over, dripping wet and grinning. Daddy, watch me dive. Zayden stood, duty calls. Reagan watched him go, something unreadable in her expression. As the sun dipped lower, she gathered her things. Zayden walked her to the gate. Thanks again for the towel and the hot dog company. He shrugged, anytime. She hesitated, then leaned in and kissed his cheek. Maybe I'll see you again, she whispered. And just like that, she was gone, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of citrus and something Zayden couldn't name. But he already knew one thing. He wanted to see her again. Zayden wasn't expecting to see her again, not really. People like Reagan didn't stick around. They passed through towns like his, dipped their toes in for a day, and then vanished back into whatever high-rise life awaited them. He figured she'd already forgotten his name by the time she drove off in that spotless SUV. But 3 days later, she walked into the hardware store where he was picking up roofing nails and a new trowel. Zayden. He turned, nearly dropping the box in his arms. She stood by the paint aisle, hair pulled into a loose braid, wearing sneakers and jeans that looked brand new despite trying to pass as casual. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a glow on her skin, and she looked a little out of place, but not uncomfortable. Reagan, he said, shifting the box, didn't expect to see you in a place that smells like motor oil and sawdust. She walked toward him, hands in her pockets. Figured if you were going to rescue people at pools, you might also know where to find decent cement sealant. He raised an eyebrow. You renovating something? My grandparents' house, she said. It's old, real old. I inherited it last year and haven't had the time to do anything with it, but I'm here now, for a while actually. Zayden set the box down on the floor. So you're staying? She nodded. Yeah, I needed a break from the city, and I thought maybe I could fix the place up. I'm tired of boardrooms and fake smiles. He studied her. You sure you're ready for leaky pipes and surprise raccoons? I've been through worse, she said, then added. I could use some help, though, if you're available. Zayden leaned against the shelf. You want me to fix your house? Well, not just that, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I'd like to learn too. I don't want to just throw money at it. I want to actually do something with my hands. You ever held a hammer? Once, she said. It was gold-plated and decorative. I was 12. He laughed. All right, you want to learn, I'll teach you, but I charge hourly. I can pay, she said, her tone even. I wasn't worried about that, he said. Just don't expect miracles. That old house of yours is probably held together with chewing gum and ghosts. She smiled. Sounds like the kind of place I need right now. They walked toward the checkout together, Zayden pushing a cart full of supplies, Reagan beside him, asking questions about grout. By the time he pulled up to her grandparents' place the next morning, he'd arranged for Kieran to spend the day with his friend's mom from school. She owed him a favor, and he didn't like leaving his son unless he had a solid reason. The house sat on a hill at the edge of town. It was 2 stories, with peeling paint and ivy climbing the porch columns, but there was charm in its bones. Zayden could see it right away. Reagan was already outside, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. She held a paint scraper in one hand and a YouTube tutorial paused on her phone in the other. You're here, she said, looking relieved. He stepped out of his truck. And you're early, that's a good sign. I didn't sleep much, she said. Too many ideas. He climbed the porch steps and took the scraper from her hand. First idea, don't use this, it's dull. You haven't even tested it. I don't need to, he said. Trust me. She watched as he pulled a tool from his belt and began scraping a section of the wood. It peeled cleanly, efficiently. Okay, you win, she said. I always do when it comes to tools, he said without looking up. So what's the plan here? You want to restore this place into a mansion or just make it livable? Somewhere in between, she said. I want it to feel like home, not just some asset collecting dust. He paused. Home for who? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the edge of the porch and looked out at the tree-lined road. For me, for now, but maybe someday for a family. Zayden didn't ask more. He focused on the siding, working in silence while Reagan fetched more tools. By mid-afternoon, they'd cleared one side of the porch and started on the inside. She was a fast learner, surprisingly focused. She didn't flinch at dirt or sweat, and she didn't complain once. But what got to Zayden wasn't her work ethic, it was the way she talked when she let her guard down. I used to come here every summer, she said, kneeling beside him as they pried open a stuck window. My grandfather would make lemonade from scratch, and we'd sit on the swing and count how many cars passed by. Some days, there were none. Zayden glanced at her. Sounds peaceful. It was, she said, but then my parents decided it was beneath us. We stopped coming. They had bigger plans. He didn't push. She didn't offer more. They worked until the sun started to dip. Zayden wiped his hands on a rag and stood. I should get going. Kieran's probably exhausting poor Mrs. Dalton by now. Reagan followed him to the truck. You're good with your hands. He looked at her sideways. You're not too bad yourself. She hesitated. Would you come again tomorrow? He nodded. Yes, can do that. She stepped closer, then not too close, but enough that he noticed the way she smelled like sawdust and something soft beneath it. I'm glad you came today, she said. Really? He climbed into the truck, hand on the wheel. Me too. As he drove down the hill, he glanced at her in the mirror. She stood on the porch, watching him leave, the house rising behind her like an old story waiting to be rewritten. And Zayden had the strange feeling that somehow he'd been written into it. Reagan opened the kitchen cabinets and stared at the chipped paint and crooked hinges. She could still hear Zayden's voice from earlier that morning, telling her not to force the screws or she'd strip them. His words echoed in her head more than she cared to admit. She hadn't meant to spend the entire week working with him, but one day turned into 2, then into 3. And now it was Saturday, and he was due any minute. The strange part wasn't how easily he showed up, it was how much she looked forward to it. She had never met anyone like him. Not in boardrooms, not at fundraisers, not on carefully arranged dates with hedge fund heirs. Zayden didn't try to impress. He didn't ask what she owned or where she'd vacationed last. He just showed up, worked, and talked to her like she was a person, not an investment. She was brushing sawdust off the windowsill when she heard the familiar crunch of gravel. She stepped onto the porch, drying her hands on her jeans. Zayden climbed out of his truck, holding a toolbox in one hand and a bag in the other. "Brought breakfast," he said, walking up the steps. "Donuts from that place on Jefferson." "You didn't have to." "I owed you," he said, handing over the bag. "You got rid of that hornet's nest yesterday. That was brave." She opened the bag and blinked. "You remembered I hate jelly." "Of course," he said. "You made a face like someone insulted your ancestors when you bit into one." She laughed, then motioned toward the open door. "Come in. I finally got the back door to stay shut without using a chair." He stepped inside and looked around. "You've been busy." "I couldn't sleep," she said, "so I painted the closet shelves." He set down the toolbox. "You always go full throttle when you're stressed." "I go full throttle when I care about something." He looked at her. "And do you care about this house?" "I think I care about what it could be." They stood there for a moment, the silence thicker than before. Then Reagan turned and walked toward the hallway. "Follow me, I want to show you something." Zayden trailed behind her past the dusty staircase and into a small room tucked at the back of the house. The windows were high, the walls lined with old bookshelves. "This was my grandfather's study," she said, crossing to the desk. "Everything's still here, even his notes." Zayden ran a hand along the edge of the desk. "You thinking of keeping it the same?" "I don't know," she said. "Part of me wants to gut it, start fresh. But then I read this last night." She handed him a faded notebook. He flipped through pages of careful handwriting and sketches of garden layouts and house repairs. One page had a sentence underlined 3 times. "Make it strong enough for someone to stay." Zayden closed the notebook slowly. "He built this place to last." "I think he wanted it to matter to someone," she said. He looked at her. "Then make it matter. Don't gut it, keep it, at least this room." She nodded, folding her arms. "You always this good at reading people." "Only when they want to be read." Reagan turned to the window. "I was supposed to be in Paris this week. Product launch, investors, the whole show." "What made you stay?" She didn't turn around. "I think I got tired of being impressive." Zayden walked to stand beside her. "You don't have to impress anyone here." They worked through the morning, replacing old window frames and clearing out debris from the attic. Reagan didn't hesitate anymore. She handed him tools before he asked, climbed ladders without flinching, and even managed to rewire a faulty light under his guidance. Around noon, they sat on the porch steps, sharing the last donut. "You always this good with people's houses?" she asked. "I'm better with the ones that aren't trying to be condos," he said. "This place has soul." Reagan tilted her head. "You say things like that, and it makes me wonder what else you keep locked up in that head." He gave her a sideways glance. "You sure you want to find out?" "I wouldn't ask if I didn't." He leaned back on his elbows. "All right, you want real, I'll give you something." She turned toward him, curious. "I used to think I'd be a mechanic," he said. "That was the plan when I was 16. Cars made sense. Engines don't lie. Then my dad bailed, my mom got sick, and I dropped out to work full-time." Reagan's expression changed, but she didn't interrupt. I got good at fixing things because I had to, he said, and now I don't even know if I want to fix things anymore. Sometimes I just want to build something new. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you ever think about leaving this town? Every week, he said. But then I look at Kieran and I think he's got friends here. A rhythm, and I'm not about to yank him away from that just because I get itchy. Reagan nodded slowly. That's why I came here, to figure out if I was running towards something or just away. Zayden looked at her, really looked, and I'm still figuring it out, but I think I stopped running the moment I met you. He didn't speak. The air between them was too charged for words, too full of things neither of them had the courage to say outright. Then Reagan reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. I was going to give you this next week, but I don't want to wait. He took it, brow furrowed. Inside was a check too many zeros for what he'd done. Reagan can't take this. It's not for what you've done, she said. It's for what you're going to do. I want you to be the one to finish this house. No more hourly, just do it your way, all of it. He looked up at her. This is too much. No, she said. Too much is what I've lived with for years. This is finally the right amount. Zayden folded the check and slid it back into her hand. I'll finish the house, but not for that. Then why? Because I want to see what it becomes. She stared at him, something shifting behind her eyes. Then bring your son tomorrow. I want to meet the other half of the reason you stay. Zayden nodded once slowly. All right, tomorrow. As he walked down the porch steps, Reagan didn't move. She watched him drive away, the check still in her hand, her chest tight with something terrifying and thrilling at once. For the first time in years, she wasn't chasing the next big thing. She was building something real, and it had Zayden's fingerprints all over it. The first thing Kieran said when he saw the house was, "This place looks like it has ghosts." Zayden laughed as he lifted his son from the truck. Good, then you'll fit right in. Reagan stood on the porch, wiping her hands on a rag, her hair tied back loosely. She looked different when she smiled at Kieran, softer, less guarded, her eyes lighting up like she'd been waiting for this moment longer than she wanted to admit. You must be Kieran, she said, crouching to his level. He gave her a skeptical look. Are you the lady who fell in the pool? She blinked, then grinned. Guilty. Cool, he said, nodding with approval. You're funny. I try, she said, standing. Want to see something neat? Kieran didn't hesitate. He followed her through the front door like he'd known her for years. Zayden watched from the threshold, his body still tense with the weight of what this meant. Letting someone into Kieran's world wasn't something he did. Ever. But here Reagan was, showing his son an old rotary phone like it was treasure, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he had to hold his breath. The afternoon passed in warm bursts of laughter, hammering, and the occasional shout of "Don't touch that," when Kieran got too curious with the power drill. Reagan had cleared an entire room just for him, filled it with puzzles, books, and a second-hand beanbag chair she'd picked up from a thrift store that morning. Thought he might need a place to hang out while we work, she said, watching him flop onto it like it was a throne. Zayden glanced at her. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to, she replied, brushing paint flecks from her wrist. He's part of you, that means something. He didn't respond right away. Later, when Kieran dozed off in the makeshift room with a comic book on his chest, Zayden found her alone in the yard, standing by a pile of lumber. You're dangerous, you know that, he said, his voice low. She turned. Dangerous how? You're making this feel like a life someone could actually have. She stepped closer. What's wrong with that? I've spent years keeping things simple. Just me and him. Anything else felt like a risk we couldn't afford. Reagan's expression didn't waver. And now? He let out a breath. Now, I don't know what to do with all of this. You don't have to do anything, she said. Just be here with me. The words were simple, but the way she said them steady, certain made something shift in his chest. Why me? He asked, quieter now. You could be anywhere with anyone. Why stick around for a guy who spends half his time covered in drywall dust? Because you're the only one who looks at me like I'm not a project, she said. Everyone else sees the money first. You didn't even see it at all. I saw you, he said. She didn't look away. I know, that's why this matters. He didn't think, he just stepped forward and kissed her. It wasn't rushed or hesitant. It was the kind of kiss that answered questions neither of them had dared to ask. It was quiet and full of promise and tasted faintly of sawdust and hope. When they pulled apart, she leaned her forehead against his. I want to build a life here, Zayden, not just a house. With you, with Kieran. He swallowed. You sure, it's not always easy? It's not supposed to be, she said, but it's supposed to be real. And this, she took his hand, this is the first thing that's felt real in years. They heard a soft yawn behind them. Kieran stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Are you done kissing? He asked, unimpressed. Zayden chuckled. Yeah, buddy, we're done. Kieran patted over. Can we have dinner now? I'm starving. Reagan ruffled his hair. How do you feel about pizza on the porch? With pepperoni. Only the best. They ate outside as the sun dipped behind the trees. Reagan sitting beside Zayden, Kieran between them, all three of them laughing over melted cheese and stories about raccoons in the attic. After dinner, when Kieran fell asleep in the truck on the ride home, Zayden glanced over at her. You really meant it, didn't you? He asked. She looked out the window, then back at him. Every word. You want the full mess. The school pickups, the mornings when he won't eat toast unless it's cut into stars, the nights I'm too tired to talk. I want all of it, she said. That's the life I'm choosing. He pulled into his driveway, parked, and turned to her. Then stay, not just here tonight. I mean really stay, with us. I already have, she said. He leaned in again, slower this time. She met him halfway. And in that kiss, there was no more hesitation, no more running. Only the quiet certainty of something solid being built between them, something stronger than wood and nails, something worth staying for. Because once, at a pool, a broke father offered a stranger a towel. And without knowing it, he'd handed her the beginning of a new life. The first snow of the season dusted the porch railings like powdered sugar. Zayden stepped outside with a mug of coffee in one hand and a wool scarf loosely looped around his neck. He watched as Reagan carefully adjusted a string of lights along the eaves. Her boots left neat impressions in the frost-covered boards, and her breath curled in the chilled air. You're going to fall if you keep leaning like that, he said, setting his mug down and climbing the steps 2 at a time. I'm not leaning, she replied, stretching to hook the last bulb. I'm strategically extending. Strategically extending into disaster, he muttered, catching her waist as she wobbled. You know, we could have hired someone for this. And miss out on the chance to do it ourselves? No way. He steadied the ladder while she climbed down, cheeks pink from the cold. She turned to him, brushing a hair from her face. I like how the house looks now, she said. It's starting to feel like it belongs to someone again. It does, he said, to us. The word landed between them with quiet certainty. Neither needed to say it aloud anymore. It was in every decision they made together. Every night they fell asleep with Kieran snoring softly down the hall. Every morning Reagan packed his lunch with star-cut sandwiches because Zayden couldn't get the corners even. You all right with hosting tomorrow? She asked, nudging him with her shoulder. I know it's a lot. He nodded. It's not every day your friend from school gets to see your dad's girlfriend's house. Her expression softened. I Still don't like that word. Girlfriend, he teased. No, hosting, she smiled. But I love the idea of people seeing what we've built here. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, then let them see it. By noon the next day, the house was alive with warmth. The scent of cinnamon and pine drifted from the kitchen. Kieran dashed between rooms with a paper crown on his head, dragging a string of paper snowflakes behind him. Reagan was in the dining room, laying out mismatched plates they'd collected from antique markets over the past month. She adjusted a centerpiece of winter greenery and candles, then stepped back. This room used to feel so empty, she murmured. It's full now, said a voice behind her. She turned to see Zayden holding a tray of hot cocoa. He set it down, then wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. You did this, he said quietly. No, she said, we did. There were guests, neighbors, a few of Zayden's old crew from his roofing days, and even Mrs. Dalton, who brought a rhubarb pie and refused to let anyone call her anything but Alice. Laughter echoed through the house, and for the first time in years, Reagan wasn't thinking about who she had to impress or what deal she had to close next quarter. She was thinking about how Zayden had found the perfect corner for the Christmas tree, how Kieran had insisted on hanging the crooked star himself, and how none of it needed to be perfect to feel like everything she'd ever wanted. As the evening settled and guests began to drift out, Reagan stepped onto the porch alone. Snow had started to fall again, soft and slow. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared out at the quiet street. Zayden joined her a moment later, rubbing his hands together. You disappeared, he said. I needed a second, she replied. It's all hitting me. He tilted his head, good hitting or bad. The kind that makes you want to cry and laugh at the same time, she said. I spent years making decisions for other people, investors, boards, my parents, and now the only thing I care about getting right is this. Zayden took her hands, then let's make it official. She blinked. What? He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket and opened it. A delicate ring shimmered inside, nothing flashy, just elegant and meaningful, like everything about them. I don't have a yacht or a penthouse. I can't whisk you to Monaco or buy out a vineyard. Her breath caught. But I can offer you this house, this life, the one we've built together. I can offer you Kieran's drawings on the fridge and my coffee that's always too strong, and I can promise that I'll never stop choosing you. She stared at him, speechless. I know this isn't the world you came from, but it's the one you walked into and made better, and I want you here, as my partner, as Kieran's stepmom, as my wife. Her eyes filled as she reached for the ring. It's beautiful. You haven't answered yet. She laughed through tears. Yes, yes, Zayden Nolan, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, lifting her feet off the ground as she buried her face against his neck. The snow swirled around them, the porch light casting a golden halo over the moment. Inside, Kieran peeked through the window, then turned and sprinted back to the kitchen. They did it, he shouted. They're getting married. Alice clapped her hands. About time. 3 weeks later, they married on the front porch beneath a garland of pine and fairy lights. Kieran stood proudly beside them, insisting on holding both their hands during the vows. The ceremony was small, just close friends and neighbors, but it felt monumental. Reagan wore a simple ivory dress with her hair pinned back in soft waves. Zayden wore a dark vest, and a tie Kieran had picked out a blue one with tiny hammer prints. They exchanged vows beneath a soft winter sky, promising not perfection, but presence, not wealth, but wonder, not always knowing the answers, but always choosing each other anyway. Later, with the fire crackling and the last of the pie eaten, Reagan stood in the doorway of the study they'd restored together. It was now her favorite room in the house, filled with warmth and shelves lined with the books her grandfather once cherished. Zayden joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "You happy?" he asked. She turned to him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life." He kissed the top of her head and pulled her closer. And as the snow fell gently outside, and Kieran danced in the living room to an old holiday song, the house that had once been empty finally felt whole. Not because it was finished, but because it was full of laughter, of love, of a future they were writing together, one day and one tender, beautiful choice at a time.